controversial subjects with the facts can be tense, but we are a science here to make things make sense.
We're talking about Cardi B, and then it's like shut it. It's like a little like beep out, shut it down, shut it down, shut it down. There's some hoes in this house.
So obviously we're going to be talking about like WAP and the Science of Arousal, but should we talk about the music video first?
Yeah, for sure.
For anyone who doesn't know, can you give us a summary, Greg, of
the music video? Iconic.
And just the song in general.
Okay, so the video is actually based on an old movie called BAPS, which I recently had to watch because of my other podcast blog, Can I Speak to the Manager, where we were doing Halle Berry. And it's a Halle Berry movie. And it's like about two black females who are like wanting to audition to be in a music video. Then they're swept up by this like white guy who is like, you should come to like wear my... It's like this absurd plot where it's essentially...
Was it a popular movie or was
Yes, it was a similar time of Clueless. In fact, it's like, here, let's talk about white privilege. It's like Clueless is this iconic movie, but this movie, I watched it. It is so funny. It's sort of about these like two black women in this like rich uppity white man's house, and just like there's like a scene where like they eat this like disgusting unseasoned white food and they go and like make this amazing. It's just like this movie could be made now. It's like it's so like Clueless in that iconic 90s comedy, but maybe not as famous. I think obviously because white privilege, like at the time, that's like what was mainstream and that's what was popular.
So this music video
is a callback
to that
movie, which I think is awesome. And I didn't know that when I watched the video. I just watched the video as like, oh, this is a very hilarious, creative, like when it came out. I actually remember where I was because we were camping, or we didn't have reception when it came out. And then I remember coming back into the internet and it was just like, wah, wah, wah. And then I didn't know, like I kind of saw like Twitter photos and things like that. And then I was driving home from somewhere and I like put it on my iPhone and I actually like a clown face was like like I remember I was just like smiling because it was like it made me like aroused. It reminded me of like the shock and awe of like when you're young and you hear like
something kind of inappropriate or that you're not supposed to be, or like you sneak downstairs and watch like Oz at night because there's like gay sex scenes and your parents are upstairs and you're just like pretending like if they come down you're like, oh, I don't know what's happening.
Oh my god, we were thinking how we have to make that meme of like those memes of the two hands coming together of muscle hands and it's like gays and straight men and it's like the connection is Oz.
Because it was like a very masculine show but there was gay sex in it. How did we get here? I forget. Arousal. Here we are.
Oh, I absolutely like loved the song. I thought it was so like, I do think it is just like female empowerment. Like this is the things that like people, oh my God, people got upset about it. It's like, do you listen to rap? Also, have you listened to any other Megan Thee Stallions or Cardi B songs? They're already talking about these things. It's just that they're so mainstream now. I think
that's like freaking decades ago. Eminem was literally saying faggot in his songs.
And Eminem was like killing women and you're okay. Like, I mean, the main person who comes to mind is like the literal like the funny, pathetic man of Ben Shapiro. So funny because he tried to come for them and it was like he was absolutely like roasted on the internet, which to me was very satisfying because it's hard to roast him because he's absurd and just says annoying things. But this was a type of roast that was so good because it's like you're just a loser. Like we all know
it was like he was afraid to say the word pussy, and it's like all these people who are like, oh, this guy owns people. He's so he can always crush anyone in a debate. It's like that's who you look up to. This guy who's afraid to say the P word. What? P word. Or did he like, I don't know. I just saw clips of that and people being like, really? And didn't he also, like, we're going to maybe talk about this in our science, but wasn't he also being like, well, I think that means you have a gynecologist, like you need to go see a gynecologist if it's wet because that's a problem. And then people were like, Ben, you know that like happens, right? Like, does your wife never get wet?
Well, obviously, imagine having to have sex with Ben Shapiro. That's the driest thing I could think of. Oh my God. Also, he's just, I don't know. That was also part of why I thought it was so funny because it was like him feeling that this is an inappropriate thing for our daughters, the wet ass P word. Like when I saw him reading it, it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Oh my God. So again, Cardi B also just brilliant at roasting these like pathetic fragile.
It
white
is
men.
interesting because we just watched the music video before recording this, just as like a little refresher. But it is funny to realize how many words are bleeped out in the video version that's on YouTube.
The dangly thing in the back of your throat. Okay, iconic line, and they
bleep like every word, every word of it.
Also, I think wet and gushy works.
Yeah.
Like I really think like sometimes like it's hard to like transfer to like the radio version, but wet and gushy to me is like almost more like satisfying. And as we get into today, like talking about arousal, men and women, and the gushiness that is our genitals when we're turned on, gushy is a great word. So like I just even liked that. Like they obviously had to sit down and be like, okay, so what can we say instead? And I'm like, I like that they went with like onomatopoeia, like gushy.
Is that onomatopoeia?
Yeah,
I mean, like
gush.
Gush. Yeah, I guess gush. Sure. Yeah.
Wait,
sure.
you don't believe me. Why don't you think that is?
Well, gushy is not onomatopoeia.
Isn't it? Because it's the noise. You'd be like gushy.
Do people do that? I've never heard someone go gushy.
Don't you think that gushy comes from the sound that it makes that you're trying to describe?
I've never thought that, but you're not wrong. And
if not, then Cardi B made it an onomatopoeia.
Well, shall we get into a study? Speaking of gushy.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Do you want to do yours first?
Sure. I love it.
Sure.
I love it.
All right,
we don't hit study time. Never mind. Okay, here we go. So mine is about understanding sexual arousal and subjective versus genital arousal desynchrony in women. So this is
now in English.
Yeah, exactly. Like literally, that's so funny because I read the title and was like, what? Then I read the whole study and was like, brilliant study. Why don't you just like, sometimes I'm like, science, just like chill out, get off your pedestal and speak English. So it's really interesting because like in another bout of the patriarchy in science / patriarchy in the world, there is a pill you can take as a man for sexual arousal, Viagra. Like we know that it works, and it has, was designed, FDA approved a long time ago, but the same thing doesn't exist for women. And a lot of the reason is a lack of studying, a lack of funding, a lack of women in STEM. It's a big issue, but we're getting to this point now where women are really starting to understand sexuality, how it works, to hopefully get to the point where they can also have a drug for arousal.
Okay, cool. And this study is about that?
Yeah. So the reason that there isn't one right now, so Viagra is also called sildenafil. You know what I mean? Like if you went to the pharmacy, sildenafil, please.
If you don't want to be embarrassed when you're like going to the pharmacy and asking for, I need more sildenafil.
Exactly. That's actually sildenafil. They're like, what? You come on, sildenafil.
Oh, you mean Viagra?
Yeah. No. Okay. Because there's actually two accepted types of arousal in women. So there's genital arousal, which leads to a wet ass pussy. Okay, so this is the one that Cardi B is talking about.
Okay.
Which also means vasocongestion of the vagina, which is the same thing as vasocongestion of the penis, which is like blood flow to it. It enlarges. You get a boner.
And congestion sounds bad, but I imagine it just means blood stays there. Like it's congested. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like when you're congested, that doesn't sound like a good thing.
That doesn't sound hot.
Like when your nose is like congested, but I guess it's because it's like inflamed, right?
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, exactly. Like congestion doesn't have to be a bad thing, but maybe in your nose it's not. But in your vagina and penis, it's good. It's essentially the swelling of body tissues due to increased blood flow. Clitoral, the gay guy. Clitoral.
What is that? What's that?
Clitoral engorgement, increased heart rate, sweating, erection of nipples, flushing of the skin. These are genital arousal in women. And this leads to vaginal lubrication and hence a wet ass pussy. So well, it's true. Okay. Then there's subjective arousal, which is separate. And this is the positive mental engagement and focus in response to sexual stimuli within a woman. So because of these two sort of ways of being aroused, most often it happens in tandem, but in some women, you can have one over the other. Sometimes you can be mentally aroused and not have genital arousal, or have genital arousal and not be mentally aroused. And so because these pathways are different, it makes it, and actually in many ways, looking at this, it's much more complex. Like is what I was thinking, is that it's actually like, I don't know, I was reading this study, like getting turned on. Like it was just like very beautiful. I think maybe as like
Question, do you not think that men can, like I understand that maybe it's different, but I imagine that men can have genital arousal without being mentally aroused.
Okay, so
maybe not as common.
This is what I find so fascinating, and why WAP is actually incredible. It's because okay, I'm going to skip to like a different part of this, but a lot of the reason why there might be an issue with mental arousal within women is a psychosocial issue that comes from the fact that women are not taught, like gay men, like this is something I've learned about in psychology studies, to accept pleasure as a kid. WAP is a new song. Oh my God, I'm getting mad at Ben Shapiro in my head. I'm like, I hate him so much. But it's like, we teach men to own their arousal from a young age. Sexuality is given to them. It's something that they take. And what this study is really getting to the bottom of is that the psychosocial aspect of sexuality within women, because it has been taught to be so shameful, because it is something that our parents will, like make jokes about with their sons, but they won't make jokes about with women. There's a lot of social pressure to not be sexual as a woman.
So then maybe that you're saying that connection between the physical turned on and the mental turned on is almost like severed.
It's severed, but yes, there's that part of it, but also from a neurological perspective, this study, when you actually break it down, it is a more distinct thing within women than it is within men.
To have that two separate types of arousal.
Yes, you're right in the sense that, like, of course, nothing is binary. There's a lot of nuance to all of this, but they have found through studying people that, like, with Viagra, with getting an erection, there is less of a split between men and their boners, and there's like psychosexual relation to what's happening.
Yeah, and to be fair, it's like, even if I wasn't aroused mentally at first, if I got a boner, I'm probably just like, well, okay, might as well be. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, I might not have thought it, but I guess I am.
and it's hard to decipher exactly where this is coming from. But if there's one thing that you can understand, it's that, like, from a psychosocial perspective, we know that we do not teach sexuality to women the same way we teach it to men.
Right. Yeah.
So who knows if the roles were reversed, if we lived in a different type of society, maybe through a lot of like large scale psychological studies, they would find this issue in men.
Sure.
It still exists within men for sure, but it actually, one study found that it existed more in gay men, which is interesting because we also aren't taught to own our sexuality.
Right. Like, or you have shame around your sexuality, around literally sex and the way you think about it, that you would feel ashamed to connect the brain to the body in that sense.
And they also found that for the mental sexual arousal in women so they have more issues around being mentally turned on when they are being self-critical of themselves. And a lot of the reason when sex really works for women based on this study is when they can see that their partner is being aroused. So it's like, it's like,
because then you feel confident.
And it's almost about like going outward versus inward. Like they find that sometimes like they would literally like study them in all these fascinating ways. But it was like when people, like when women got like a little in their head is when it started to be harder for them to connect their potentially like wet ass P word to their brain. And it's like, that's just so interesting because it's just one of those reasons why WAP, the song, is actually so fucking powerful.
It's like owning that.
It's owning
being
it.
Like, women are sexual.
Yes.
They can choose if and when and where they want to be sexual at their own time. And
and it's like also there's like the lyrics are so powerful. They're like they're about, pleasuring the man, but also owning it, like being okay to be in your head and be like, F yeah, let dangle thing at the back of my throat. Like it's just when I was reading the study, it made me really realize that this song, I didn't know how and why I thought it was so important, and I loved it so much. But this study, it was like, it's written by, six scientists.
Send that to Cardi B.
Yes, exactly.
Maybe she read it ahead of time. And
honestly,
she was like, I need to write a song about this.
Exactly. She's so freaking smart. Like, she understands how like society should run. I would vote for her anyway. I would. She's so smart.
I think she's smart, but she's not a politician.
No, and she has already said
I don't think she wants to be. But it's
like
cool that she
instincts
uses
are
her
smart.
platform to talk about those things. And even having someone like Bernie Sanders come and do an Instagram live.
Yeah.
Like, she obviously is aware and cares about how politics affect people. So obviously she's aware of how social issues affect people as well. And I think that's awesome.
So, so female sexual arousal actually will always start with getting wet, which I thought was kind of interesting. It's like the basal vaginal fluid is produced from like glands. So these are some of the names: abdominal peritoneal cavity, the fallopian tubes, the uterus, the cervix, the vaginal wall, the Bartholin's glands. And so that is enough wetness to prevent adhesion, like during sex. So that's like wet enough for the penis to go in and out and for it to work. Mm-hmm. But the vasocongestion and DHEA, dehydroepionidione, androsterone.
Cool. Got it.
A
Love
hormone.
that one.
Yeah. Are what facilitate like even more lubrication. And that's when there will be a decrease in pain and it'll like actually become something that will like pleasure the man and the woman further. And the DHEA is something like that hormone that's been studied like on mice. They just like apply it topically and they find that the mice get more wet. And then there was also an interesting part of the study, which was that genital arousal after exercise for women was higher. This is not mental. This is genital arousal. Actually, after exercise, they would actually
like
produce
once they
more fluid.
engage in sexual behavior, or you mean just exercise in itself?
Exercise in itself. So they have what they did is they made women exercise. Then the control group was to watch nature videos.
Okay.
And then
versus like
the other group watched
videos.
sexual videos.
I see. Okay.
And the people who exercised before and watched the sexual videos were
had a higher response.
Yeah, more wet than the people who didn't exercise, watch the sexual videos. But when they watched the normal videos, it's not like they were just like getting wet from nature. It wasn't like, you know what I mean? Like the exercise and then watching, it wasn't like the exercise was making them wet. It was exercise and then a sexually arousing video made them more wet.
Okay.
Which I thought was kind of interesting. It's like if you, I don't know.
No, that's really interesting. I wonder what it is that does that. Was there any theories that were proposed? Like something that your body creates while you exercise, or maybe just because your blood's flowing more?
No, there weren't any theories. Like,
That's cool.
But it was they're all trying to find out as much as they can to eventually be able to market and make a drug for women like Viagra to ensure that like there's equal playing field in that, because sexual arousal is really important. And if there could be a drug that helps with either genital arousal and mental arousal, or hopefully both, that's an amazing resource for sexual health.
For sure. That's really cool. I should say one study I came across, but isn't my actual study time, was about pornography and how women are just as equally turned on from pornography as men are. And I'm sure that comes around with stigma that like men watch porn and women don't. Yeah. And whether or not that like the percentages of people who do engage with it, it was interesting to see like, yes, of course women are turned on just as much with pornography. And I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. It reminds me of that. It's like, yeah, we pretend like they're not. But
I know, and it's just so, I don't know. I'm just,
there's like these cultural ideas of what a woman should be and what things are for men.
And I think that this video and WAP and everything is tearing those down. And I think it's so interesting to see reactions from men. I know we're picking on Ben Shapiro because I think he represents maybe what a lot of men were thinking at the time, where it's just like there's such a double standard here. You wouldn't react if this was a man singing about his boner. You wouldn't. It wouldn't even have crossed your mind to talk about it, to speak about it, to say that it's disgusting, to say it's inappropriate for little girls. And that just shows you that you're treating those little girls differently than you're treating those little boys. And I never thought there would be a direct connection through a study that I found. In fact, when I started reading the study, I wasn't thinking about that at all. I was just wanting to learn about sexual arousal. And I actually thought it was going to be about men too, but it wasn't. And it was just so interesting because I was like, this is exactly what people need. Like we need to make sure that, I mean, I can kind of relate as a gay man. It's like, it's so sad. And I still see it in my life now that I wasn't able to, as a young person, own the fact that I was being turned on by a variety of things. I was being turned on by women. I still think in some ways I am. Like I was very turned on while reading about what's happening. I don't know. And just like, there's just like sexuality. It is fluid. It's wet and gushy. It's fluid. And it's just like, we need to allow people to explore that and to feel comfortable with that from a young age, obviously through sexual education, in order to have these stigmas decrease so that we can ensure that they actually can be aroused and have a proper sexual life. It's so interesting. It's like so often are we taught through like religion and these things that the right thing to do is to suppress it, as if teaching kids about sexuality and owning their bodies is a bad thing, when really the science is telling us it's the exact opposite.
For sure. Yeah, no, I think that's really true. And I think it speaks to the idea of when you repress anything, whether that's from whatever source or just society at large. Like people are so afraid of young people going and having sex, and it's like the repression is probably going to make that worse. Like you should rather educate someone.
Exactly.
You should rather explain to them how they can do it safely and just be aware and educated than try to pretend it's not a thing and that it's so dangerous you'll die, or like just, there's all these like stories built around sexuality and things that kids are and probably finding out younger, but always were finding out young, right? Like kids become sexual really young, and whether or not they're active is different in their sexuality. But like when you're a young kid, you quickly explore and find out what is what. So
and there's so many psychological reasons why too. When you hold things from people, it becomes more curious to them. Like if you're open and you're talking about things, it becomes more normalized. It becomes less risky, and you're not going to go do things behind people's back. You can actually talk to your parents. And
it's so weird to me. I wonder where in human evolution or cultural evolution the idea of sex being so taboo came. And I don't know if it's religion. I don't know if it's like, you know, obviously other animals,
thought.
other creatures that I think about probably have sex publicly.
So humans are one of the few animals, I read this once, I think there was like one other funny one, that choose to have sex not openly,
like go somewhere else and be alone.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I could understand that could be like like to protect yourself when you're vulnerable, maybe like that you'd want to be somewhere private. Maybe that's the instinct. But it's just interesting that it in most every culture, it seems it's like really taboo to even talk to your kids about sex education, right? Parents are sometimes mortified to have to even acknowledge,
and so
that.
Are kids. Like
kids
it
goes both ways, and maybe
that
that reinforces it, where kids don't want a picture. But then why is that? You know, it just makes me curious. But
well,
I don't have an answer for it.
I don't have a direct answer, but I mean, I think obviously religion and culture and society is a really unique part about being human. It's a fascinating part about being human.
Right.
It's why it's
these
so
rules
important
we
to
make up.
Yeah. I mean, in many ways, it's like obviously we can say like it's damaging to like, you know.
I'm sure. I mean, everything, and not everything, but lots of things had their time and place, and I'm sure could have had like benefits to society, but no longer do. Like there's lots of things that have changed culturally through the thousands of years of time that you're like, oh, it actually made sense then to do these practices because of the way the world is, and it doesn't anymore, but we still follow it as tradition, and we can talk about changing those things now.
Yeah, and I'm just like happy to be alive when this song is out. Well, you know what I mean? Like,
oh my God, Cook, that's so funny.
Well, okay, I'm
so genuine, and
I'm being so genuine, and I genuinely.
I'm just happy to be alive when WAP came out. Like
I'm not kidding.
Other people are like, oh, I'm so happy I grew up in the 70s, like hippies. And other people are like, you're like, I'm so happy to be alive in the WAP era.
I'm fully like hand over my heart. I'm actually so serious. Like even the 70s, I'm like, think about the oppression of like women, the oppression of like race. Like obviously those things are still happening now, but it is a sign. Like it is a sign that we are progressing, that things like this can come out. It can be like the most watched video, that like it's a TikTok trend. Like no, every artist would be killing to have their song become like this trend, which it is on TikTok. Like I'm actually like fully serious. And like I hand over my heart. I'm a lot I can only be happy to be alive as the world, I think, is still progressing forward for many people, and I hope that it continues that way, and we just have to make sure that it does. Oh my God, I'm like crying. I'm like literally letting gushy, let us pussy. Like I just can't believe it. Like I just like play it at my funeral.
You do talk like that though, in day-to-day basis, not just on this podcast. Like you'll bring it up. You're like, it just is so iconic, and it is.
Well, we have to take things where we can right now.
Yeah,
the world's
that's
messed,
true.
and it's like, yeah.
I was going to say, before I jump into my study, was just thinking about what it means to be a gay man who is so dumb when it comes to female anatomy. I feel like I want to be such a feminist and an ally to women, but then sometimes I have those moments when I'm like, I actually don't know anything. Like there are sometimes these trends on TikTok where girls will like be like, only the girls will get it, and they'll like talk about something to do with like periods, and you, as a dumb stupid boy, sometimes I don't know if it's a joke or if they're serious.
That's so interesting, because at least like because you're saying like a man in a heterosexual relationship would maybe have like more conversation. They'd be like, oh my God, like they would
have
more
to deal
like,
with periods on a regular
period
but
blood.
Even still, like straight guys, I think, can be very ignorant of female anatomy. So I think these jokes on TikTok are to fool the whole like, you know, all men who have never dealt with it personally. But then I think sometimes it's like true. It's like someone will be like, I just realized my best friend didn't realize, who's a guy, like that girls go through this. And then I'm like, holy shit, is that true?
Oh my God.
I didn't know that. I'm 32. So yeah,
we got to ask because it's like, that's the funny thing.
Because
like,
it is also, it's been made private. You know what I mean? It is part of that thing. And especially as gay men, it's like, I don't even get to have like experience with it at all.
But it's so funny because I'm like thinking, okay, it's like as gay men, we're always around women. Like we grew up with women. What was that? What's that meme where it's like gay guys in high school and it's like, I'm willing to make an allyship. What is it? It's like
I'm open to alliances.
Yeah, I'm open to alliances. That's every gay guy to women to girls in high school. I'm open to alliances. So I do think it's interesting because it's like we spend so much more time around women. And like for me, I'm like, if I want advice or if I want to talk to someone intelligent, I go to a woman. But then it's like, you're right, but we don't have to interact with them necessarily sexually. And that's where the conversations we're talking today are about.
And they wouldn't necessarily, like at that age, young girls may not feel comfortable talking to a boy, period, even if it's their gay friend, because like you wouldn't get it. Versus their girlfriends who they could be like, I had this thing happen to me that's never happened before. Does it happen to you? You know what I mean?
But I do think like periods are so interesting. And I think that's another thing that's like so important that we like normalize and talk about. And like even someone who like we engage in anal sex, it's like, you need to normalize these things.
What? I do not.
Okay,
I'm
well,
joking.
oh my God, problematic.
I'm
canceled. I'm kidding. No, but you know what I mean? Like they're like period. It's like, why are periods gross? Why is anal sex gross? But like some dude like coming on his chest is funny. Like it's like we have to be like they're all the same. They're all just bodily fluids. Like they're all things that we all go through. And I think like now I'm just like, let's have some drinks tonight with our girlfriends and be like, so what's the vag like?
Yeah, like get a little anatomy lesson or something.
Yeah, seriously. Like, cause I don't know. I think you're right. Like we
it's just a part of my life that's not there.
Yeah, and ignorance is not bliss. I want to know all about the wet and gushy macaroni in the pot.
I'm going to go into my study now. Basically, what it was looking at was figuring out whether or not we can detect from our senses, like our sense of smell, whether a person is sexually aroused, which I thought was interesting. So like just from smelling you, I know we talk about pheromones, but I think pheromones specifically relate to the endocrine gland. But this is something that they've realized in previous research is that humans can communicate emotional states like fear and sadness via chemosignals, they're called, which is really interesting, right? So humans can pick up on emotions, not necessarily just from signals in our body language and face, but from these things called chemosignals. So this study was, heteronormative. So it's was looking at males detecting female arousal. And basically they would smell their sweat. And the three things they found was that men would prefer the scent of sexually aroused women. And even if they were given multiple samples of the same woman when she was aroused versus when she wasn't, they would prefer the ones when she was aroused. And the sexually aroused samples also aroused the men more. So without them necessarily knowing if they were, they were smelling a sexually
like, oh my God, I got
sample.
a bone.
Well, I don't know if it was that, and I don't exactly know how they measured that, but whether it was verbally or whether they were measuring like the male genitals or something like that. And ultimately they found that the exposure to chemo signals would increase the motivation of men to have sex. So there are all these things beyond just what we see and feel, but that's kind of the caveat. The visual cues were still the strongest. So in another experiment, they realized even when a woman was aroused, if she wasn't displaying sexual cues to a man, and that could include also like the way they were dressing or the way they were acting, like being seductive, then the men were less interested. So all that to say is that ultimately these chemo signals that come off of us or are part of us when we're sexually aroused are likely an additional way to detect sexual arousal.
Yeah, it's not like,
but not like the way we detect it,
course,
right? So
yeah.
when you're attracted to someone, if they're giving you the body signals, the eye signals, and they're actually sexually aroused, that's probably like the pinnacle of cueing someone. You know what I mean?
So like you're saying it's like, okay, the scent it's like there's something there. There's a chemo signal that allows men to sort of be like, whoa, I'm more turned on by this scent. I don't know why.
Yeah, and well, first the men consciously would say, I like the scent more. They wouldn't necessarily say I'm more turned on, but then in subsequent studies, they realized that the men were more turned on.
What was this? The smell of their sweat or of their like vaginal?
It was
secretion?
their sweat. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that's what I mean. It's not just to do. I mean, possibly they could measure that as well, but in this study, it was just generally because you're not always near the wet and gushy. You know what I mean? You're trying to get signals before you get to that point. So this was like just
God, I'm like literally getting turned on. Okay. But know what?
It made me curious about men and gay men in particular. Do we pick up those same signals, not only from women, but from other men? And then thinking of, do straight men pick it up from other straight men? You know, like, do we all give off these signals?
Yeah.
And I would love to see a study where, like, you smell the sweat of, it's a straight guy smelling only straight guys sweat, and if they would find it more attractive or
just like it more and not know
when they're aroused.
That's PhD students take it. That's a great study because I mean, obviously science is very heteronormative. It's like misogynist, it's heteronormative. It's all the fun things that life is. But it's like, yeah, why not? Why can't we just study men on men, women on women? It's only going to give us more insight into like
those chemo signals and how we interact as groups of people.
Like sexuality in and of itself is maybe more enticing, point blank.
There may be a study out there of that. I just came across this one.
Well, it's actually, I mean, it's always really, like, we read sexual health studies all the time, and it is really sad how heteronormative so much of it is.
Yeah, because sadly it's still taboo to do it the other way. You know?
Yeah,
and
even
also, it was only in the one direction: men finding women sexually attractive.
Oh my God! Wow, that's so interesting. Because oh my gosh, exactly. That's again.
Which no shade to this study. It's smart to have one specific lens you're looking at,
but it's why representation matters. Because I've had conversations like this with people in the science field when you're like, all of a sudden you're like, yeah, okay, but what about queer people? And then they just go like, wait, what? It's like, because it's not crossing your mind. You're like, okay,
you're not
I'm
trying to exclude anyone. You're just thinking, hey, this is my experience, and now I want to validate or explore a hypothesis of my experience.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, it's not shade. It's not like these people. It's like a lot of the time, ignorance. It's like you're just not thinking about it. But that is so interesting. I've always like, because even like, I don't know, I'm always just like, it's so not gross. But like, no, it's not gross. It's actually not gross.
Scared.
I love. Okay, but like, you know when you like smell your own dick, or like like you take off your underwear and you're like, I'm always like, is the smell different if I've like been turned on versus if I've done exercise?
I imagine now, yeah.
Like I just always sometimes.
I mean, it might be different for. Well, no, this is all about sweat, so it probably is. I imagine it's even different for a girl who actually gets wet there. You know what I mean? So that if she's actually turned on, you would get a whole different scent.
Yeah, true.
Chemo signals and whatnot.
It's so much more like interesting.
Oh, I had to.
Dicks are so weird.
I totally forgot. Yeah, no, it is.
And I'm just like, oh, it's just like this like thing that like dangles, like not the back. It's like dangle at the back of my pants. No, the front of my pants. Imagine our dicks are where our assholes were, and our assholes were our dicks were. Oh my God, I love that. Being like, come here, and like bending over and showing your dick. Gosh. Oh, what? Okay.
So that's some fun science about arousal. I had something in my mind I wanted to say. But I totally forgot now. No, it was just, I cannot remember.
We're turned on now.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I'm just so excited for the new Cardi B album. Megan Thee Stallion is amazing.
So is that like is that technically a Cardi B song?
Yeah, like technically.
And is that technically like a song she released that's going to be from her next album?
That's like what like people are saying.
See, I don't know the things.
Well, no, but I'm like that's like it's like she doesn't have an album out. It
but
is
like presumably it's like a lead signal on the album.
Watch the behind the scenes on YouTube. It's so good. Like it shows them with the snakes. Like it just shows like them filming the video, which actually was it was being filmed during the lockdown. Like they have a scene where they're like, oh my God, like we have to try and logistically figure this whole thing out.
Oh
like gosh. It's pretty wild.
That's
but
intense.
You do see that Cardi B is like, she went to Megan Thee Stallion and was just like, this is a dirty song. Like I can't think of someone better to help me out. Like cause Megan Thee Stallion's so good at rapping, and she's so like what we're talking about. She's sexually liberated, and she just is like the person that Cardi B went to. So it is a Cardi B quote unquote song.
Okay.
But I mean, they're both like, oh God, it's so good.